The Last of Us came out just over a year ago on the PlayStation 3, and now we're getting another taste of Naughty Dog's legendary game with the remastered version for the PlayStation 4. So let's take a look at The Last of Us in this video review and dive into why we thought this game is so impressive. If you've played The Last of Us on the PS3, there's nothing new in terms of gameplay or story. However, the devs at Naughty Dog really bumped up the aesthetics of the game to create a beautiful post-apocalyptic world in crystal clear 1080p. Not only that, but the textures have been increased to 4K resolution and a 2K resolution boost to shadow maps as well. All of this is running at 60 frames per second, and if this hasn't got you itching to get your hands on the game yet, you might want to check your pulse. Something Naughty Dog has always been known for is a cinematic experience with their games. Whether it's with a game like Uncharted or The Last of Us, you feel like you're in a movie. An obvious way to achieve this effect is through the game's cutscenes, and The Last of Us cutscenes are truly remarkable. Everything fits together to create a movie-like experience, and it's apparent that a huge amount of time was spent on cinematography and making sure each cut worked with the next. We were also really impressed with the actors' performances, both in terms of voice acting and the mocap performances that they provided.
I was close with his brother, Tommy. Said if I was ever in a jam, I could rely on him.
Was that before or after he left your little militia group?
He left you too.
While all the in-game animations like walk cycles or crouches are hand-keyed, the cutscenes utilize motion capture data, and capturing the actors' movements and mannerisms really breathed life into the characters and helped create that movie-like experience. So during the cutscenes, there was a high-res model that is switched out, and not only was the polygon count increased, but the complexity of the facial rigs were also boosted. You can see in this shot the great facial expressions on this man's face and just how fleshy that face feels during these cutscenes. You can also see a nice example of some of the great texturing, like the blood running down his face and the deep gash above his nose. Boosting the resolution to 4K, you're able to really see every tiny detail. The 4K textures really create a more vibrant and believable world, and it's a testament to the texture artists over at Naughty Dog. And speaking of the textures, we really liked just how much your character's textures change over time. And not only do they change, but they stay that way for a long period. You've probably seen before in a game you get shot, blood will appear on your character, however it normally disappears in about 5 seconds. In The Last of Us, if you get shot, the blood stain will stay on your character's clothes even after you heal yourself. The little details like that are what makes the texturing so great. And the blood splatters on the ground and walls were also a really nice feature. Like in this shot where we brutally slam our opponent's head on the door, you can see the blood splatter appear on the texture of the door based on where the impact was. So when it came to the environment modeling, we found there to be a truly impressive amount of set dressing that went into creating a believable post-apocalyptic world. A huge part of what made the environments feel run down was the amount of foliage, the overgrown grass around the buildings, and all the veins that have begun to creep their way up the side of the buildings. It really helps sell the fact that any upkeep in this city has been completely abandoned. And the devs were also able to achieve a really nice, believable look with the foliage. Yes, like many other games, the blades of grass are flat planes. But the way they distributed the different planes and animated them offset from each other made the clumps of foliage feel full, and you actually forget the fact that these are just polygon planes with a texture applied to them. Now, with any game, if you're going to have this much set dressing, you're going to find the polygon count suffer even a little, and we definitely found this with The Last of Us. As you can see, the spot-on texturing had to make up for a lot of the low-resolution props and set pieces. Like in this example, you can see the metal handrail is definitely not round, or in the background there is a wire spool with a giant octagon wire. It looks like the devs really didn't increase the polygon count for much of the environment from the PlayStation 3 version. However, the devs were still able to create a more vibrant world through the use of the 4K textures. And when you're working on a game like this, which requires a huge amount of set dressing in order to create a believable post-apocalyptic world, you need to make the decision of fewer props in higher resolution or more props with lower resolution. Can you imagine if The Last of Us didn't have the amount of set dressing that it did? It wouldn't feel like a rundown world at all. Maybe an empty world, but definitely not a world that is on the brink of extinction. While we definitely would have liked to have seen a more liberal polygon count when it came to the environment, it's understandable to need lower resolution props when you have so many of them. Along with the environment modeling, the character modeling didn't see much of an increase in polygon count compared to the PS3 version. Yes, the cutscene models were higher resolution, but the in-game models weren't much different. And one of the biggest mistakes we noticed in the game was when we shot off a guard's helmet. You can see in this shot, we shoot the helmet off, and his head geometry is actually cut off where the helmet was. These little inconsistencies in the character modeling can break the immersion in the game, and while it may have been a one-time glitch, it's something you don't want to see in a finished game. The animations for the game were extremely well done, and the animators at Naughty Dog were able to breathe more life into the characters and use the animations to help sell the narrative in the game. For example, at the beginning of the game, we're playing as Joel's daughter, and we just woke up in the middle of the night by a phone call. As we start walking around, the walk cycle is different and looks as if she is sleepy. Her steps are kind of clumsy, and her arm swings very little. She even rubs her eyes a few times. And as the story progresses and things become more suspenseful, her walk cycle changes to a more scared and cautious walk. Her head darts back and forth, her arms close to her chest. These little details in the animation really help create a convincing story. The Last of Us Remastered definitely got a great makeover, and if you're a 3D artist, this is one you'll want to check out. And if you haven't already, be sure to add us on Xbox Live or PlayStation Network with the gamertag Digital-Tutors.